Let the bass kick.
The system is down. The system is down.
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up?
So wait.
What's up?
The system is not down. It's up.
It's up. The system is up. We're
System
up.
of a Down?
Yep. Welcome back to The Last Cash, everybody. This is episode 13.
Lucky number 13.
Wow.
Is it Friday? No, it's not. All right.
We're going to call this one the election special.
It's Monday. We've all got
The
jobs.
election connection.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and say right off the bat, as we're probably talking politics at some point tonight, that tends to be murky waters to get into on a podcast. So we're just going to go ahead and put this out there that by the nature of our show, we tend to go down rabbit holes and go into little tangents and stuff from time to time. So we may or may not say some things that do not accurately reflect what we actually think and feel and believe and stuff like that. So,
Or represent factual statements.
yeah, or represent any other sponsor or organization or anything like that. We just kind of
Opinion.
You know, yeah.
Opinion and talk out of our
random
ass.
thoughts coming
about
off the
our
top of the head.
And we want people to think.
Yes.
Think about
Like most
things.
Americans, we want people to think we know what we're talking about.
Right.
You think we know what we're talking about, and we want you to think.
Meanwhile, he's probably the only one who really does know what he's talking about.
No,
Right.
never. Always question me.
Anyway, what are you two crazies been up to? I feel like it's forever since I've seen you guys in the old Sapphire. Always seem to be missing
Well,
each other.
COVID's been hitting a little bit more, not as much as pediatrics, but we're getting into cold and flu season plus
Yeah.
COVID, so it's
True that.
it's been a little bit busier.
A lot of false positives with the flu and thinking they had COVID.
Most of the time it's not COVID, even but we did have somebody today that lost the sense of taste and smell that was positive. So there's certain things that are like, yeah, that's probably only COVID, but it's
That could be a good thing or a bad thing around Thanksgiving, depending on whose
oh my
house
gosh,
you're
I
eating at.
can't wait.
Yeah.
Turkey
Oh,
dressing.
Yeah, let's not talk about that because that's my
Is it dressing or
cheat 2
stuffing?
months.
I say stuffing, man. I grew up with stuffing.
I call it dressing.
I call it
Stuffing.
dressing.
Or
I don't know if
the worst part though is I only eat stovetop dressing. I'm not
What?
a big fan of homemade dressing.
My wife is the same way.
No,
Like my aunt makes some awesome homemade stuffing. And yeah, my wife just can't really get into it. I love it. I mean, I
Yeah.
love the stovetop stuff too. I mean, I
Yeah.
could eat
Yeah.
that year round on it as a side.
And sometimes we do.
Sometimes
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, super easy.
Seems
to
like
make.
there's always a box of stovetop in the pantry, no matter
lasts
who you
forever.
are or where you're from. Yeah, so November 9th, today, Monday, November 9th, and clearly, as has been revealed over the last couple days, we have a new president-elect and vice president-elect, Biden and Harris. So,
Are we sure? Are we 100%
yes,
sure now?
yes, Biden has officially gone past the required 270 electoral votes. He's made his acceptance speech. Trump still has not conceded, and I believe he's still continuing to have rallies. So,
He's suing everybody.
suing a bunch of states for recounts or to dismiss the ballots and all that stuff. So, about par for the course and what you can expect. But yeah, so I think everybody, though, I think the world, at least the United States, mentally has fast forwarded to January because we're just so ready to be over all this stuff.
yeah.
Not to throw anything out there, but it kind of has hints of some Hitler-style qualities towards the end of his reign there. Going after
Let's-
people,
Let's not go there, at least
try
not right
not
at the
to
beginning of the show.
leave power, if you will. No, that's a big stretch, but
Well, I was thinking about
it's a huge.
there haven't been
stretch,
as
but-
many. Yeah, no, I would say I would no comment on that topic.
Yeah.
AHC channel.
American History Channel.
Before we get
Gross.
into talking politics and getting our show canceled from
Yeah,
YouTube and getting
You're
banned
trying to
from
cancel
YouTube.
at the top, so we don't.
Yeah.
We're just kidding.
Another reason why we're talking election stuff tonight is because it is currently the voting for the voting is underway currently for the 2021 Music City Disc Golf
Yes.
Board of Directors.
Absolutely.
And 3 out of 4 hosts of the podcast are running for a spot on the board of directors.
Right.
Surprisingly enough, I'm not one of them.
No.
I got.
I'm pretty excited
I
about
saw
that.
your post, man. That was
It was very heartfelt.
yeah. But if you want to
Yeah, you want to elaborate on that, Will?
speak a little bit on that,
I
or
just love
not,
to pick your
let the
brain
post
on it.
speak.
No, I mean, I'm happy to.
Let him get to typing over there.
We could at least list the people that are running.
Yeah, probably should do so.
Yeah, so
For those of you also who do not know, incumbent means that you've are on the board previously and that you will be running
currently
again.
on the board,
Yeah.
running for re-election.
Yeah,
Yep.
So for those of you that don't know,
Yeah, so let's see. You got you
He's
got
pulling it
your
up.
fingers on the details there, Dr. Hoy.
Dr. Dietz.
Yes.
Fingers on the pulse of the community.
So we got myself as incumbent, Robert Zavala, incumbent, Daniel Dobbs, incumbent, Jay Skinner, incumbent, Jeff Lorenz, Shantae Cox, Kyle Meek, Ruth Miller, Kyle Copeland, Marcus Rogers, Kyle Batten.
A lot of different Kyles.
Pick 7 candidates.
Pick 7 Kyles.
There's 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
All
11.
Kyle,
11 candidates on the ballot.
and they all
Yeah.
have beards, I believe.
Batten sometimes
Batten
not.
does
That's-
usually.
In the summertime, maybe not school
I'm
year.
trying to fact check you in my brain.
I've seen a scraggly.
Jeff does not usually rock a beard.
No, Jeff doesn't. No, I was talking about the Kyles.
Oh, the Kyles,
The
yeah.
We3 Kyles.
Yeah, they all do generally have a beard going on.
Yeah.
That's very true.
So I know that I personally have mistaken one for another one multiple times.
You've had some issues with mistaking disc golfers for other disc golfers this
Dude,
year.
I'm terrible with names, good with faces.
It happens to me all the time. Once I get like 15, 20 names deep on a registration list at a tournament,
Yeah.
I just start really splitting up names and faces pretty bad.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so good opportunity to talk a little bit about the election and encourage you guys, if you are members of Music City Disc Golf here in Nashville, to please become a part of the process. Emails went out to the email addresses that you used to become a member of the club this year with a link, but you can go to, if you're a member of the club, you can go to musiccitydiscgolf.com/vote, and there's a link in there to the ballot. You will need to put your first and last name. Votes are anonymous, but we need to verify that you are a current member of the club. And then, like as Dr. Hoy mentioned, there are 11 candidates on the ballot, so you will need to choose your ideal 7-member board of directors for next year.
You
That's
may
how it works.
also vote at the club championships.
That will
this
be the
weekend.
final voting, yes. Online voting is open throughout this week, and then the final votes will be collected at the championship this weekend at Cedar Hill. And they're all 11 candidates are excellent, awesome people, friends of ours, and they all bring, each of them, a very unique and awesome skill set. Independently of each other. So,
Well, I think this year is going to be kind of an exception, too, because I think a lot of these guys are committed regardless if they are on the board or not. And so that in itself is just tremendously helpful.
yeah, a lot of the people that a lot of folks might not recognize some of those names, but a lot of the folks on the ballot this year are folks that are fairly new to the club and have only been coming around
Right.
for the last year or two.
Yep.
But they're people that have demonstrated their commitment to what we're doing by showing up at, like, anytime we ask for help, basically.
Yeah.
So they're at every event. And there are reasons why they have been nominated and are running for a spot on the board. Now,
And that's a good way if you're interested in becoming more involved, show up to events and just start pitching in,
Yeah.
and you'll figure it out. Like that's
Ask
how
what-
most of these people start.
Just ask. We will point you in the right direction.
yeah, absolutely.
And then, there's a lot to be said about just giving the time that you can, and maybe you can't be on the board or maybe accept a nomination for the board, but any and every little bit helps. And this year coming up, particularly 2021, with the growth that we've had and having the national tour finale on top of that, we're going to need the entire community pool this year.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what 2020 brings, because 2020 has been...
You mean 2021 brings?
2021 brings, and 2020 is... That's
Second that.
Anyway, Will, I want to know, like, I know you had a lot going on with everything in disc golf world and real life, and I know I'm going to toot your horn for a little bit. You've been with the board, what, 4 or 5? Same time as I have, 4 years?
This is the 4th year. Yes.
4th year, okay.
Mhm.
So I was on the board the very first year Will was on the board, so we've been working hand in hand, and watching his transformation into somebody who was a hands-on, on the ground, like, leader and doer becoming an actual leader and president of the club, and taking it from somebody who did a wonderful job of rebuilding the club and restructuring it and getting it back to the glory, and then Will taking it and stepping it and making it even better. Zach, I have no doubt that you will probably, more than likely, no jinxing, knock on wood, be our president next year, so you got some big shoes to fill.
Oh, definitely.
But I just wanted to say how proud I was of you, man, and like the dedication and just watching you become the person you've become. And I know that there's been a lot of stress and stuff involved in that process, but the person you are and the person you were then and the person and the leader you are now is it's quite the achievement, I would say, and quite the growth that I watched. And I just wanted to say how proud I was of you because, like I said, I'd follow you. I mean, when disc golf sense to the ends of the OB line.
Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you for saying so.
And it's also nice to see that you're going to get to take a little break because I know you've been stressing.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's hard not to do that job and stress. You know what I mean?
Stress.
Yeah, it's hard to do that job and not stress. It's just a lot, and I mean, and ultimately, you know, there are a ton of reasons why I'm not running for a spot on the board next year. One of them is that, you know, when you are the one person that is finally responsible holding the bag for 30 plus events and making sure everything goes smooth, even if you delegate very liberally, it's a lot to keep track of. And there's really no downtime because you're constantly getting text messages and phone calls and emails and having to, you know, do meetings, and it's a lot. And to do it for 4 years, I mean, it really amounts to basically every week I'm working a 40 plus hour a week job, and then I'm giving 20 or 30 hours a week to the club on top of that. So it's definitely obviously a lot.
I was going to say that's a minimum a week, 20 to 30 hours.
Yeah. So, and then you factor in a year like COVID, and I'll be the first one to admit too, it's like there is a certain amount of political nonsense that comes along with doing disc golf administration and promotion. It's, you know, disc golf politics is probably my least favorite part of the entire job, and it's the part that I've been worst at, and I do tend to take things to heart and take things personally, and I get my feelings hurt, and I get annoyed and aggravated a little too much, and, you know, it's just Dr. Hoy, and this is the reason that I have endorsed him as my replacement, is because he has been right beside me for the last 2 years and seen exactly what goes into everything, and he knows firsthand all the moving parts. So he has the operational knowledge and the skills and the experience to handle it. And he also has the temperament to handle it better than I do. I think he has demonstrated that, you know, it's one thing that has drastically improved since he's been in a position of driving this ship is consistency. You know, people know much more what to expect when they come to one of our events now because of the job that you've done. And there's no shake in Dr. Hoy. You're a rock. You know what I mean? And you're all about the details, and so we're able to pay attention to that kind of stuff. So that's the one I've tried to kind of remove myself from this process and not involve myself in like influencing it in any kind of a real strong way, just because I am stepping away to a large extent. And I think that one of the beautiful things about the structure of our club and the bylaws is that every year you have a little bit of transition, a little bit of turnover, and you're bringing people in to a position of leadership, and then you're training them up and equipping them to be tournament directors and promoters in their own right. And you get to watch them develop, and the organization gets stronger as they develop, but also they're bringing new ideas and new ways of thinking to the table, and it keeps everything fresh.
Sure.
You know, when you're handling the volume and scale of events that we do, it's real easy to get into a routine and get into a groove and just say, all right, copy paste, do the same thing. Let's pick this out, streamline it. And you get into a process. And while that is definitely beneficial in this kind of an organization to some extent, you do need fresh perspective to keep things new and keep things appealing, I guess.
As well, just moving down the right path of productivity. I mean, in general, you have to have new ideas and new thoughts, forward thinking, if you will. But I don't want you to sell yourself short. Alpo kind of started it, and you kind of took it over and ran with it even more so. But it was getting to a point where at any point you could hand it to anybody on the board or anybody coming into the board as a copy and paste. Here is your rough outline of how you should run the tournament. This is everything right here, printed up. Do it like this, and it's going to be a success. And when you say copy and paste, it is kind of a copy and paste, but it's kind of a rough draft of a copy and paste. But that you can't sell yourself short there, because Alpo and yourself kind of instigated that, because that's what you have to be able to do as a board member and as anybody coming into the board is be able to follow that and learn that structure to be successful. And I think that's been one of the best things the club's done is set that structure up, 5-6 years ago, and ran with it and kept with it is that structure. And that's made a lot of everything we do, copy and paste, or run a lot smoother, and gives people, or lets them know what is expected when they show up.
Yeah.
Which is that structure. So don't sell yourself short on that. And that's not a knock on you, because trust me, I've seen you work. I've seen you passed out at your computer desk.
Yes.
Well, again, back to everybody that gets involved in this having a unique skill set and experience. I'm very much, I come up with crazy ideas. My brain just goes 1,000 miles an hour, and so I can come up with cool ideas and stuff like that. So I have definite strengths and things that have made me
your voice
particularly
is very deep.
Well, thank you.
And carrying.
It's very, very sensual.
Nice timbre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and those are things that have helped me guide us to the point that we've been at. But having somebody else in that position that has a different set of skills, that's, we've already established a procedure, kind of a standard, and now we're just embellishing that. And we've done a lot of work for a lot of years of kind of stripping away inessentials and finding like the flawed ways in of doing things that we've been beholden to, and then
trial and error.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten to a really good spot, particularly over the last 2 years, where now there's not a whole lot of excess.
No.
Right.
And what we're able to do now is focus on making what we have left as beautiful and as awesome as it can be.
Yeah.
And that's where that change in staffing really comes in handy. And you have different people with different strengths and different positions. I will say, and we might as well go ahead and we'll jump into, we'll talk a little bit about each candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken a little bit about you. We've spoken a little bit about Dr. Hoy's strengths.
Before we jump into that, I want to ask you a quick question before we get off you leaving the board. Did you, in your years of service, accomplish the goals that you wanted to accomplish? And if so, what were they? And if not, which ones did you not? And what could you have done to get to those? Or what could you have done differently? Sorry, I'm hitting you with some boom.
No, that's totally cool.
I
know I so rarely get to be interviewed.
I thought it was like when we talked about it over the phone. I was like, "Ooh, we could just interview Will and talk about election stuff."
I don't know.
The Will McCaskill car
Turn
drove
the
real
mirror
good.
on yourself, sir.
Team
Look inside.
did well. Car handled great.
No, I'm happy to get into that a little bit. So yeah, I definitely think that when I decided that I was going to run for a spot on the board and give it a shot, I definitely had a 5-year plan in mind. Or more specifically, I had a list of objectives that I hoped to accomplish, and the timeline that I kind of had in my brain realistically was looking like 5 years. So that was definitely at the forefront of my mind when I got involved. And things on that list were, and it was all just because I saw where the club was as a member and participating in the events and stuff like that. And I knew the people that were involved, and through conversations with other members of the community, I knew generally what most of the people in the Nashville disc golf scene wanted to see us have here, and wanted to see Nashville become somewhere special and a destination. And so yeah, things on that list were, continuing what Alan did by adding structure to the club, and part of that was getting our 501c3 articles of incorporation, which, shout out to Dr. Hoy, he was instrumental in getting that accomplished, and that we secured that in 2018. Yeah, golf snaps to Dr. Hoy.
Thank you.
But it was all of those things, having the website be more user-friendly where people could stay up to date on their points and shut up. But yeah, so, and then obviously one of the big ones was get a national tour event. in Nashville. And
By
obviously
God.
we signed the contract to have it this year, and then COVID-19 happened and set the timetable back to next year. And one of the considerations that I had in my mind was, and yes, so if I were to list one thing that I don't feel like necessarily has been accomplished yet, it's pulling off a national tour event.
Mm-hmm.
So,
in
a sense, so I'll just to wrap that thought up, in a sense, I feel like I am kind of stepping away before all of my objectives have been completed, but at the same time, in a very real way, I was aware that if I was going to put enough attention and time and focus into the NT to make it as successful as it needs to be, being our first time on the tour, that I can't be hands-on with all the other 30 events plus that we run throughout the year. And in addition to that, I really need to spend more time with my wife and my family and spend more time at home. And I do want to get back to enjoying the game and playing disc golf more. And those are all part of it. But thankfully, we've talked about it as a board currently, and there's not going to be an issue with me running the national tour event and not being on the board of directors. And we may form an MCO committee, and I might be the chair of that to kind of organize everything. But it's still going to be a club event. I'm going to probably be the TD of the national tour event, and somebody from the board of directors will be the TD of the A tier. And we're still kind of talking and ironing out how we want to arrange people. But obviously, we're going to be adding even more people to the staff, which we doubled up this year. We had, I think, 13 total staff members?
Yeah, roughly.
Well, if you really count all the people that got staff shirts, was 24.
Was it 24? Okay.
Well, those
that's
guys
true.
were
But
the
we had a
weekend
huge
guys.
staff this year, bigger than ever, because we had 614 players.
Yeah.
So, but that's going to increase even more next year. So, we're at that point now.
Yeah.
Where, that's just what it is. So yes, it's kind of a yes and no to answer your question, Jay.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like the club is where I wanted it to be, when I stepped away, and just that technicality of the fact that we haven't actually executed the NT event. Yeah. That would be the only rule.
One thing I wanted to mention was two terms that came to mind when I saw that post that you made, that because I know we've been talking, you're stepping away from next year. And the two things I thought of were outreach and challenging yourself, because we've had so many people that aren't even in disc golf that now in Nashville, like Tennessee School for the Blind. That was a big thing picking up this year, and that will probably continue with figuring out some charity. We're helping out other people as other charity organizations, and a lot of people touring pros are really having a good experience in Nashville, and some even this off season are spending their time in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming to you for contacts and resources and things like that. So I think the outreach of the club, people that know about disc golf and know about Music City Disc Golf now, and other clubs looking to us or asking us questions and we working with them, I think that's really improved a lot. And then challenging yourself. We always say, like, all right, what's going to be difficult? And we go right for it. And I think that's a big thing of is there a phone ringing?
What is that?
Marcus's phone is plugged in over here. It's ringing.
Oh, I was like, is that the ice cream guy?
Yeah, I think challenging yourself. We set the bar high, and we're in very good with all the rules people at PDGA. Basically, everybody at the PDGA knows us from sending emails and getting, talking with them. And so we have very fair events that are very challenging to pull off, but I think that's one of the marks of our events. I think you're a big part of that.
One of the marks of the people who have been a part of running those events and being behind the scenes and being up, even in the forefront of the event. Like
there's always going to be something new, but you know what to expect when you come to a tournament.
Sure.
You know that it's going to run on time. Know that, like, people always come up, hey, how far behind the tee times? Like, no, we're exactly on time. We're exactly on time.
You're making us late because you're not at the tee pad 5 minutes before your tee time.
Just
I've always said that there's two things that really make a tournament special and make it stand out from others. Is one, make sure you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. Make sure that you've got the nuts and bolts ironed out and locked down. Make sure you've got that you're you're enforcing the rules, you're enforcing the correct rules, which, you know, you're always going to be learning new things, and you're going to be doing that by making mistakes.
Yeah.
So how you handle those mistakes is what really separates really good TDs from the pack. But in terms of a tournament, once you've got the science locked down and you're able to add more things that make it special, that's when people remember it and they go home talking about it, and people travel from further away to play it because the word has spread. And so that's where we're at with the Music City Open now, and have been for the last couple of years.
And Halloween at Dogwood as well.
I think we probably had
more people I've ever seen.
Probably shouldn't. We won't get into that. It was on private property, so, you know, we don't. There's nobody that needs to be called about there being a big social event. But it was honestly,
it wasn't in Davidson County.
Yeah, it wasn't in Davidson County, but it also, I think people really behaved pretty responsibly overall. So. I mean, everybody's kind of used to the fact that you got to keep a little distance and do certain things differently.
We talked about that. You know, at this point, you've been dealing with it for long enough. You kind of take appropriations if you go to any type of social gathering. If you go out to eat, I mean, you prepare yourself. If you go, I mean, to downtown, which is crazy to go downtown to actually see it still being a tourist place, because you got half people with masks.
Some of those videos that show up on Instagram of downtown people in downtown going wild.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to real quick to get back to your point on not being able to pull the national tour off this year. We didn't pull off the national tour per se by title, but I firmly believe, going back to Laupo's last year first, and going as president, we have been pulling off the equivalent of roughly a national tour as it is, because it certainly blows a lot of the majority of A tiers out of the water. I know that the A tiers I've been to outside of Nashville they're not as big of events.
Well, yeah, I remember Paige coming up to me in 2018 and saying, "Wow, dude, over 400 players. That's huge. That's awesome. Congratulations." And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty crazy."
Well,
and then this year we had 614, and it all ran smoothly.
Our MPO field, how many people we had at MPO and also FPO, but it's more than a lot of NTs.
Oh, yeah.
How many people we had in our MPO field.
Yeah.
Well, and to touch on that, too, when Will's talking about the event, like, there are certain disc golf tournaments that just outgrow the title of tournament. And that is, you know, where a couple of our events are at. They're at events. And this year, like, not having those ancillary events at the Music City Open was a little bit odd. But I think it opens up a huge door for us to provide even more so on the back end for the national tour as far as ancillary events.
Yeah, and to kind of sum up what I was saying earlier, it's like, no, it's fine. Just to put it into a short, brief, one-sentence kind of little soundbite, is make sure you're running a good tournament and then make it an experience.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Understand that people are purchasing an experience from you.
Absolutely.
And when you're able to make sure that all the tournament procedural stuff is locked down, then you can add special things that make it a memorable experience. Side games and raffles and fly parties and all that stuff. Obviously, COVID put a lid on all that. But
well, and just to throw that out there, none of it can be done without the community supporting us, because it's just, seven of us?
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't do any of that without all the people who support us in the community, which... Just to throw that out there, which is why I think we all serve on the board or have served on the board and got into it to begin with. It was because of that community.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, that's
my feelings
that's
out
exactly what it is, man. And I'm grateful for this community. I intend to always be a part of it.
Yeah. Best there ever is.
Yeah, and
never was.
I just, I think that with the candidates that we have on the ballot this year, there's really no way it turns out bad. I mean,
right.
No.
We talked a little bit about Dr. Hoyt's qualifications. We also have another incumbent, Robert Zavala, is on the ticket. And clearly, Robert is awesome. You guys all know Robert. He's
tall guy, always laughing.
Big Z. But he's been our membership officer, and he's been really, really good at not only tracking the membership database and making sure that everything is up to date and making sure that people are paying their dues and so on and so forth, and getting all the things they're entitled to. But he's also good at connecting with the membership and engaging with them. Yep. And so in my mind, being that he's willing to serve another year, I keep him as membership officer because he's doing a fantastic job at it. You guys, I'm sure, have some thoughts on Big Z and his...
Well, Z was pivotal in some of the TSB stuff, getting with the schools, reaching out to the community whenever we had to branch off and put some subcommittees out there once we got a season back this past year. he really stepped up in a big way. Him and Ruthie, I mean, who wasn't a part of the board, and took over that role and really got some work done. Unfortunately, again, COVID prevented us from being able to really work with anybody. But I was rather impressed this year with the way he stepped up.
I think the main thing for Big Z was at MCO, it's like we're telling, we're giving everybody like the course. He was a course TD at Cane Ridge.
Yeah.
And basically nothing was said to him. I mean, what the expectations were, but it wasn't like, oh, do you need help with this? Do you need help getting the course into this? It was just like, oh, yeah, Robert's a course TD. He's on it. And everybody had one of the biggest times when people talk about the MCO, the round at Cane Ridge, either Baby Cane or Big Cane, that was one of their favorite rounds.
Mm-hmm. Explain to anybody listening, like kind of the breakdown of how that is, how you have course TDs and then regular tournament TDs.
Yeah, basically we had the tournament TD was Will for the Music City Open. You were the assistant TD. And then we had course TDs. So Cedar Hill was Coop and me. I was assistant. And then Danielle and Katie were at Seven Oaks. And Robert, Big Z, and Lyndon were at Cane Ridge. Kyle Copeland and Ruth Miller were at Two Rivers, and Justin Martineau and Kyle Batten were at Naval Hill.
Mm-hmm.
So right there, you already see so many moving parts.
Well, I wanted you to explain that because I wanted for people to understand how stressful that can be when you're trying to communicate with three people who are like the overseers of the tournament when they're course TDs and trying to and you never heard anything from Robert. And you're like,
essentially, the way it works for the people that are listening and aren't familiar. Is as the TD and the assistant TD, you and I, and with your integral help as well, we basically set it up. We built it and packaged it up, put a bow on it, and then with each set of course TDs, we basically had to hand them their portion of that.
Yep.
And we've set it up. Now they had to execute it. They had to make sure it ran smoothly and there weren't any problems. And so for all intents and purposes, each set of course TDs was running their own tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
And the one thing that many things I was impressed about, but particularly with our course TDs and our other event staff is that at each course, everybody felt like they were getting a special experience and like getting the experience that they paid for and having, the appropriate amount of attention paid to them. And I mean, to see the setup that Robert and Lyndon had at Cane Ridge, and to hear Lyndon doing those tea announcements, it was just, I pulled up there to give them lunch, and it was, I walked away going, oh my God.
It sounded like I was at a Chicago Bulls basketball game.
Yeah, it was gnarly, man. And it was the same with each set of course TDs. Every time I showed up or talked to them, they were having no problems. They didn't need anything. It was
Spotters.
Just, it was
perfect.
Volunteers. Yeah,
volunteers.
But yeah, that's how that works. But yeah, so clearly Robert was one of those. So he's doing a great job.
Yeah. And he just stepped up in a massive ways. So much could be said, and you couldn't fit it all into words about Robert this year.
Yeah, and he's also been a really instrumental part of the team at Cane Ridge, keeping that course playable and actually usable in a tournament. Because that's, especially with Baby Cane, that's always been a concern.
Yeah,
is drainage in certain spots, and if we get weather, how's it going to play? So, Robert deserves a lot of applause and golf snaps for everything he's done, and I hope that he continues to do so. Another incumbent, we've got Danielle Dobbs, who was appointed as operations officer or vice president this year after Zach Evans had to resign.
Mm-hmm.
And
she actually served on the board previously. It's been a long time ago, but right before Alpo became president of the club.
Yeah, I want to say if she wasn't on the board in my first year on the board, we still were having meetings at their house, and she was still very much a part of the first meetings I was a part of.
Yeah, the first year I volunteered and got involved before I became a board member, that was her last year on the board.
Yeah. And she's got a brilliant mind for it, and her occupation, her career is administration of a nonprofit organization. So she's got a lot of insider know-how on how we can really cement our infrastructure and establish a path for sustained and continued growth for the club.
Right.
And with her know-how, she's, fully capable of filling any number of positions on the board. However that shakes out, I'm sure she's going to be instrumental in whatever position she ends up in. But she could, in my mind, she could easily do the information officer job, the financial officer job, the operations officer job, she or executive. She could do any of those jobs in a fully do a fully good job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely she's another one to consider very strongly. And we have Jay, another incumbent, and you've been special events officer pretty much every year, right? Or were you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Special
Nice.
events officer from pretty much day one.
Yeah, and so when we run tournaments, Jay is usually instrumental in making sure that our merchandise is set up and divvied up properly, and we have things on display so people are interested in participating in the side game and the raffle, and making sure that our CTPs are in order, and arranging course assets and planning for the execution of the event and how we're going to space things out, and translating what we're proposing to do into real time and real space. What's it going to actually look like, and actually putting the rubber to the road. So you've been around so long, you have experience with pretty much all of our operations. So if you got plugged into multiple positions,
Yeah,
you would do just fine as well.
I had to learn the final and last one.
And I feel
this
like
past year.
you know how to, like, customer service. I know you have that in your background.
Sure.
And each
sure.
year at MCO we have
I always have
something comes up where Jay just like, go take care of it, Jay, and he goes, and then usually people after he talks to them are like, oh, actually they had a good experience, even if it was something that was maybe a negative, or somebody didn't enjoy something as well, or they had questions about concerns, and they usually come away with like, well, actually I'm glad you came over and talked to me about that. Each year I feel like, well, the 2 years I've been involved in MCO, that something comes up and you have to go take care of it. Just like, all right, call Jay and send him in, and it's going to get taken care of. So,
well, those are some kind words, and I appreciate them. And I just to kind of give some kind of statement about those things. Literally, I came into the board with the mindset of, I want to give the board a fraction of what, or excuse me, not the board, the club, a fraction of what it's given me.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to leave the club, or whenever I say I'm done and walk away from the board or in the club, I'll never walk away from the club, but from the board, I just want to make sure that I left the club and the community better than I found it. Yeah. And I think I kind of grew up with this motto in sports: you have to get better every practice, every time. And like, I feel like I take that into the club and into our events. And it's, fortunately for me, I missed a wonderful opportunity to be an interior designer. But I can, that plays to my strong suit, and being able to set those events up. It's like, not only is it something that I'm decently good at, but it's something I enjoy, and it makes it even easier. And so it's nice to be able to be a part of that, and be able to be a part of building that community and giving back in the way that's enjoyable for me. Because I understand that, like, sometimes volunteering is not always the fun. It's not always the funnest thing you ever do.
Yeah.
But when you can enjoy that, that's why I keep coming back year after year. And when you talk about handling situations, I just love people. I guess you two both know this, because I'm always social butterflying at events. But yeah, that's why I'm here, and that's why
he's never met a stranger.
That's true.
He can just go up and talk to anybody.
But and I want to continue doing that and continue giving back to the community that's given me so much. So I would appreciate your votes, guys. Thanks.
Plus, he can speak in movie quotes, and that's something
that
that's
a lot.
appreciated by a lot of people.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah. You put me on the spot. I was trying to think of one.
Got him. Yeah, so plenty of good incumbents to consider. I don't think you're really steering yourself in an improper direction with a vote in any of their favor, but that's going to be the case with everybody that's on the ballot. Another person that is on the ticket is Jeff Lorenz. He's a good friend of ours, has been for a long time, him and Sarah. We love them. And Jeff has always been down to help with all the club stuff, and he shows up at almost all of our events, him and Sarah both. And he's enthusiastic for the success of the club and the growth of the club, and he's got a really special background. He up until just recently, he's been the vice mayor of Kingston Springs. Yeah. So he's got obviously administrative and leadership experience. Okay. He's also a school teacher. I believe he has a degree in mathematics.
Yeah. He's also a scuba instructor. So teaching and leading and being a part of the
classic
school.
triple threat, as we were discussing before the show.
Finding lost disc.
Finding lost disc. He goes into the.
If you've had a disc in a pond in Cheatham County somewhere or in Ravenwood and it was found, it was because of Jeff.
Yeah, him and Russell.
Russell
has helped with that too, and a number of other people.
Yeah.
AV.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jeff, obviously, I think he's much like Danielle. I think he could get plugged into many of the positions available. I mean, he would, being that you're, hopefully in my mind, you're moving up to executive officer, so the financial officer position will be vacated.
Right.
So Jeff could easily fill that role. I think he could also do, obviously, public relations. He could do the VP position. He could do any number of things, I think, and do fantastic at it.
Well, and it's to be noted that he's been nominated several times, but this is the first year he's had time and been able to actually accept that nomination. So I'm hopefully looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff's a great dude. Also a great choice. We've got Ruth Miller, Ruthie Toothy, our dear friend who has
just looking at the list here.
Yeah.
And, yep.
Make sure I don't leave anybody out.
You're good. You're
good. We've got Ruth Miller, who has been, obviously, she ran a wildly successful trilogy challenge earlier this year, over 100 people.
Yeah.
And
all the sunshine she is.
Yeah, and my first tournament, I've mentioned this before, but was a trilogy challenge. I had the minimum 25 people. And so I was very impressed with her for that. She's already running another event coming up soon, Throw Pink event.
Yeah.
That she's putting on, I believe, December 5th is the date for that. So she's on the ticket. I think that she, what she lacks in, time served and experience, I think she's definitely got the enthusiasm, and she's already got her feet wet with directing a tournament. So she knows a lot about the moving parts and what you have to plan for, and what kind of money is involved. And
she was assistant TD at Two Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's also put in a lot
for
of
MCO.
the legwork at different places, cutting in the Mill Ridge course for the practice event. And so she knows what kind of work is involved as well on the other side of things.
Yeah, she's been at all our work parties. So she's been with us at Mill Ridge and all that stuff. I mean, and with the Music City Open, as a course TD at the Music City Open, she's been in the big leagues at the shows. So not to shake a stick at Ruthie's experience in tournaments, but one of those people I mentioned that brings a fresh perspective and is thinking in terms, especially what all disc golf organizations need to be doing, is concentrating on the diversity of the sport and reaching out more to women and kids and groups that are underrepresented. And she's got her finger on that pulse. So would be a great asset to the board. Shantae Cox is also running for a position, and she's been working hand in hand with us for many of our events for the last couple of years. She's done a lot of our trophies, a lot of our stamps. We've used a lot of her merchandise as prizes. She's been running, obviously she's an artist, and that's her trade. So she's a visual artist, super talented in many different ways, but she's also been running a lot of clinics. So she's got her Disc Maidens line. So she does women's clinics and women's leagues. She's also got Ace Disc Golf Apparel. So she's sponsoring a couple people through that. And she's just been doing a lot of really cool, innovative stuff in our area. And she's been an asset to us. So another person worth considering. Obviously, most of the people listening probably know Shantae. We've had her on the podcast multiple times. A lot of love for Shantae. And so another solid choice on the ballot. And then we have the Kyles, and that's rounding out the ticket, right?
Marcus
Rogers.
Right? Marcus, I was hoping he'd be here.
He's here today. He's just not.
He's asleep
in the studio.
Wasn't feeling good, today. But I was hoping he would be here to kind of speak for himself. Obviously, Marcus, he is just an awesome dude, and he's been around the scene for so long. So many people that are deeply plugged into our community have stories about getting tips and pointers when they were starting out from playing with Marcus. He's been instrumental in making the podcast more special. We have a studio now, and we're doing video and stuff. So, doing that and being so generous and hospitable for the podcast, but also just being such a good co-host. And it was I think a big bonus when we got him on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I was gonna say, I think he kind of got involved. Your phone ringer on? I don't think so. I think that was Marcus's. I think he kind of, in a way, got sucked into the board aspect and the behind the scenes aspect by way of just being a part of the podcast with us.
Yeah.
But it was funny to watch him because he wasn't just getting an insight of something that he didn't know, but he was giving opinions and learning, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to be on the board." As soon as I said something about nominating, and it was it's kind of awesome to watch him go from just become a brother to us, but then joining us in the podcast, and then kind of watching him kind of get sucked into our world because of being on the podcast and him just running and embracing it.
Yeah.
So it's really neat to see. And I'm happy that he accepted his nomination.
Yeah, and he's, I mean, another person that could do really well as membership officer or public relations officer or any of those positions that require engagement with the community. Yeah.
Because he knows pretty much everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody knows him. He was
Yep.
telling me the other day he got recognized by somebody for doing the commentary on the MCO coverage.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Yeah, he did a great job on that.
Yeah, that was his first time ever for jumping in the deep end like that. He did fantastic.
Yeah.
Super impressed. And we did all those with one take. I mean, well, we did one warm-up one. I'll take that back.
We did not.
No, it took us multiple tries, yeah, for sure. And we've done it a few times.
Yeah, well.
Much better this time around, though, for
much,
sure.
Much better.
Yeah, so...
Big skinny, y'all.
Big skinny.
That's
in
right.
The house.
I'm looking forward to some more of that next year. We'll get even better the next time.
Right, absolutely.
In theory.
And then, of course, we've got the Kyles.
Yep.
Kyle Copeland was course director at Two Rivers for the Music City Open. Another one that's been at all of our work parties. He's come running every time we've asked for help or asked him for anything. He's also... He works in visual production, audio visual production, so he's got a lot of tech knowledge, and I think he would make a great choice for information officer. But again, a person that's just really relatable and personable. And
for Two Rivers, he's really been instrumental. I mean, helping with
he's
Zach
been a
Evans
direct
and
part
Donnie
of the team.
Bannister
And him and Ruthie both.
That's true. That's true.
And that's a huge project to be a part of, you know, the renovation of an entire course and making it viable. I mean, that's huge. So another person with a lot of experience, but again, with Coop leaving, with Jared Cupadura not coming back onto the board next year, we definitely need somebody that has some technical expertise for the information officer position, because we need somebody that can manage the website,
right?
And they can make sure that the points are updated and accessible to the membership through the website, and to and technically, I mean, like, the information officer would manage the social media as well. So. He's who, in my mind, I would have put in for the information officer position.
Yeah.
So shout out to Kyle Copeland. Kyle Batten.
Let's start with Meek, because I have this in beard order.
Well, they all have beards.
I know this. I have it in beard order. We have
So yeah, there's Copeland.
Epic beard.
Yep.
Then we'll move on to Kyle Meek with a medium to
It's full though.
fluffy.
He's got like the
beard.
full dimension. He's not lacking
No.
in certain areas, like where I've been lit on fire. You know,
So there's Kyle Meek. So let's go with him next.
So Kyle Meek is somebody who I would have pegged for the the financial officer position that Dr. Hoy will be vacating, because his background and his career is in the financial industry. So definitely somebody that could make sure that all of our finances are up to date, and that we have quarterly financial statements that are available to all the members, and everybody can see how the money's coming and going.
Right.
So, and that's obviously vital to have for the club, is transparency financially.
How much fun is that, Dr. Hoy?
Well, Dr. Hoy's a details guy.
I like organizing stuff and knowing where things are going. So to me, it's fun.
Well, I just know you spend a lot of time doing the financial part, so it's not a task that...
And everything else.
Well, that's one of the things where, as we get bigger, the finances get bigger, and so we need more organization. So I'm going to be working closely, with financial, because getting the information also back out to the membership.
Yeah, that's
because
huge.
that's a big part of 501c3. They're nonprofit, but you need to be able to look back on them, because we've gotten involved in some charitable organizations, like we're part of the exempt organizations of Tennessee, and so there's bigger things, like people at work can donate to Music City Disc Golf because it is a 501c3 nonprofit. And there's these other organizations that you have to apply to be a part of, like Benevity and some of these others that we've become a part of, and it's just a lot of it's application and details, but also figuring out where the money goes. And sometimes we figure out, hey, this event or this part of an event really helps us, generates a lot of money because people really are excited about it. So we need to include that more, and always offering like how much competitor pack can we offer? What can we offer? Like, getting deals and, on certain things like that. So
you don't think it when you think of disc golf event or tournament or boards or clubs, but there is so much behind the scenes paperwork that has to be done. That has to be done professionally and correct the first time around, and
the cost of
those
entry
skills are needed,
and getting the payout correct. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, you can have the best tournament, but if the payout's not correct, that's all people remember. So,
Yeah.
It's very
vital.
true.
And then you got to talk about the tightrope between a decent players pack and decent payout.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And where do you draw those lines?
Right.
So it's all, stuff that needs a lot of
Brain power.
attention to detail and good brains on it. So Kyle Batten, I guess, to round it all off.
A smaller beard.
Definitely not least, if last.
One guard beard.
Yeah. Still distinguished, though.
Very distinguished. Much better than mine.
Kyle's a workhorse. He's another one of our great friends and another one that has come running every time we've called for help. He's been at all of our work parties. Anything we've asked to do. He was assistant course TD at Naval Hill with Justin Martineau for the Music City Open. So he also has some administrative experience with tournaments. And
Were you making a play when you said running? Because literally, when you hollered at him, he literally ran to you.
oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, it was the craziest thing working with the MCO.
Yep, another amazing candidate and another fresh perspective. It would be his first year on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Also
a school teacher.
Also a school teacher as a profession, and especially just to mention this specifically, he works with some pretty difficult children. I don't want to throw around the term special needs, but troubled kids. Yeah, and we got a lot of troubled kids in the club.
I was just thinking Kyle Batten is the person when
he's the cat wrangler
making tea times. If there's a card that's like, wait a second, this needs a balancing out. Kyle Batten's going on that card.
Oh yeah,
this needs a calming influence on this
very
card.
He's very positive and totally chill and mellow.
Yeah.
He's not somebody that's going to get thrown off or get pissed off or feel some kind of way if something changes. Like if we need him to jump onto
which
a
happens
card.
at every tournament.
And he's a
pretty
hard
much.
worker.
Workhorse, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
At
Absolutely.
Ravenwood, he carved up a bunch of stuff.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been with us for a while now.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of hands-on work, and I definitely think very highly of Kyle. So
Kind of noticed the theme of most of the guys who accepted these nominations have already kind of been a part of helping throughout the years and in general.
Yep, exactly. That's the thing. You've seen most of these people at events because when we need somebody to, can you watch this while this person does that? And I think a big thing of our board is you can still play because we don't want, like, if you're on the board, you just have to stop playing. Like, we find a way to, like, okay, you all work at this point, you all work at this point. And so we need a lot of those other people that aren't even on the board to step up for an hour or two here or there to help us, add cards, which thankfully we don't have to do much anymore because digital scorecard, but
Or just
there's
watch
plenty of other things.
Watch the home station.
Exactly. TC, Tournament Central.
And we want everybody to have more access to learning the ropes. And it, we need more people coming in that are willing and capable of running tournaments.
Because I think this year we've had a lot of people that come up, hey, I got a great idea, and like your strategy of, okay, you go run it.
Yeah.
We'll help support you, and a lot of these people have gone out and like done that event. And ran
Ruthie,
it.
Andrew
Yeah.
Lamont.
Yeah. Well, that's 100% a you thing. Like where you took that and was like, I can't take every event everybody wants to do and make it mine or make it the club's. Like I have to empower those people. And I thought when you came up with the plan that everybody on the board is going to be an official, is going to TD their own event, at least one, minus the MCO, all year long, and that in itself is so instrumental to somebody's growth in our sport on the administrative side.
And the growth of the community.
Sure.
The strength of the community, because we're not all going to be around running tournaments forever.
Right.
And if we can't have a situation where we walk away and nobody else knows how to do it.
Right.
And so that's part of the process that I've always felt is important to invest in as you're moving forward. But, this is, I'll say this, in summation, and I think there's a lot of people that probably have no clue about the election or that it's happening or that nominations were open or whatever. We made a bunch of posts saying, or I made a bunch of posts saying that nominations were open, what the process was to nominate somebody or be nominated, what the requirements were of the bylaws to be a candidate for the board. I made posts on all of our social media. I've mentioned it on the podcast.
Emails were sent.
Emails were sent out to all the club members. So, there's your sign to a certain extent. And then now, but I mean, historically, it's always been like pulling teeth, trying to get people to be a part of this.
Just like pre-reg.
And that's why we started doing final voting at the championship so that we could actually chase these people down before they left and make sure they voted. And I've tried to encourage people in past years to, if you've accepted a nomination for a spot, campaign. I guarantee you, there's a lot of people who have no clue who you are.
Yeah.
So you've got to engage with the people that are going to be voting, because so many people we finally cornered them and get them to cast a vote, and they have no idea who half of the candidates are.
Right.
So they pick the ones they know and then just whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not.
A lot of that's the growth, though, this year particularly.
But, that's also something that everybody that's a part of the process needs to take ownership and responsibility for. So I haven't seen a whole lot of campaign posts, and I think most of the people that were nominated by board members.
I was politicking.
Shantae was nominated by Caroline Lux.
Yep.
So
I nominated a slew of people.
yeah, and so we're at a point now where it's up to you guys to find out who these people are and figure out who you want to be running the club for next year. Because
Hey, look on that Facebook thing on your phone.
On a side note, I'll be making a post later.
Dr. Hoy, politicking.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, just look at your phone.
I thought you were telling me to look at someone on Facebook.
My bad. Look at Facebook if you don't know who the guys
Will,
are.
look at Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it quickly.
Get that hit of dopamine, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey,
Get your fix.
What is it? Social Dilemma? That movie is, dude, watch it. It'll change
Social
your life.
Network?
No, Social Dilemma on Netflix. It's a new documentary that just came out.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's intense.
I was too busy on
It is
Facebook.
incredibly intense.
And I just listened to the podcast that guy that was in the movie did with Joe Rogan, and that was even more
It'll
diving
make you
into
never
it.
want to touch that thing again.
Oh, they program it to where it's like
It's beyond that.
you see
now.
a reminder on there, like emails or like a number 1 over a text message. You're like, I gotta check this.
You ever been thinking about something and it pop up in your news feed?
It's psychic.
I think a lot of times, if you're
alluding-
thinking about something, you've already engaged with it in some way on
Yep.
on social media at some point. So even if you don't, like, if you think, man, I didn't even open anything or click on any links or anything. Why is that showing? I didn't even talk to anybody about it. I think there's a lot of times where you think they're like, I was just thinking about it. That's weird, but you probably
clairvoyant.
hit a like on something or at least
That's true.
touched it or
But we can all admit that when you say something, it pops up on your news feed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely does.
Big brother.
Yep, it's all programmed. It's all orchestrated. And that's the world we're living in. And I don't think, honestly, and, I made a post about this too, but with the overall, the presidential election, I think a lot of people are either really, really upset or they're celebrating really hard. And I just don't feel like
What have we accomplished?
the outcome of the next few years is going to be that much drastically different based on one side or the other. I think we're going to see a lot of the same. Hopefully some other things change. I mean, however you feel about Trump or, any other president or the state of things in the country, I mean, the one thing we have to say, and we all can agree on, is that everybody is super divided and polarized right now. And it's like you're on team us or team them, and I don't like you if you don't agree with me.
It's a weird time.
Yeah, and we've come to this place where, and, I feel, I think a lot of people probably would, and I'm probably about to say something really rude, but I think I felt for a long time like, in general, it seems like people are getting dumber. Or at the very least, like their attention spans are getting shorter, and the information the information they're able to retain is getting small. Like the amount of information, their bandwidth is getting smaller and smaller, and it's I think it's more important. The thing that I think is compounding this is that now people that don't agree with each other are unwilling to communicate and talk and reason things out.
Right.
And that's where every problem throughout the development of humanity has been solved. That's where every innovation has ever come from. Is a table where people of differing opinions are able to come together and hash things out.
There's no diplomacy anymore.
Yeah, and we're just into this downward
That's
spiral.
how some of our best ideas for the club have come about.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Getting into heated discussions or with, membership or why isn't it like this? Why doesn't it like this? And then we come out with a third option that's not either one or two.
when you think that we're all fun and games and just laughing and all having a good time all the time, there are 5 fights that we both were upset about the way one of us wanted to do something, and we had to figure out a way to make it work before you saw the happy-go-lucky side of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, like, that's what's really cool about working with you two, because I've never had that with anybody. Like, I can just yell at you, and you can yell at me, and we're like, all right.
Well, we're brothers.
See you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. We fan.
But, going back to what you're talking about, I don't think that you're saying anything politically incorrect or anything wrong by saying that the people of the world have become dumber. And there's some rabbit holes and some very interesting rabbit holes we could jump down. But as an overall, in general, look at like the reality of the world. Look at like what's in front of you all the time: a TV screen, a phone, a tablet, something like that. And just from my own point of view, from having kids and then having a stepchild who's 10 now, and watching them when they don't have that, there's no imagination. There's no, I'll go outside and play in the creek, or I'll go build a fort, or I'll go do that. It's like they just don't know what to do, and it becomes aggravating, and they become upset. And it's
anxious.
I think a lot of that is on the parents too, because it's an easy babysitter. And I'm guilty, just as when Adeline's screaming in the car, here's my phone and here's Disney Channel. Yeah. You know, and it makes her stop screaming. So we're all guilty of it as parents. But I think that's a huge portion of it. And when you compound tablets and computers and video games and everything like that, and parents don't limit any of that and force their children to go outside or use their imagination, none of that thought process happens. So when they get to these moments in life where we think maybe they should have thought of that, or their brain should have processed that, their brain is set up to not. It's just set up to just not do. And I think that's because it's constantly being stimulated by all everything that's around them. Yeah. That's just my take on it. I'm sure that's not backed in any kind of science, but that's just what I've observed from being a dad the few short years that I have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a cultural thing that that is going to take years to really reverse itself or come to its fullest
a head
point. Yeah. And that's another thing too about these kind of elections, man, is I think a lot of times people are pinning the blame for things on whoever happens to be the face at the time that certain things happen. But all of this stuff it's ripples from stuff that was done 20 years ago, decades ago.
So I'm going to ask you a very controversial question.
One second. No, it's cool. The we were a podcast. I think it was Joe Rogan. It could have been another one that I was listening to, but they were talking about, people are pointing to what successes Trump has had, and one of them being that the economy is stronger now than it was when he took office. And somebody was explaining that, because he deregulated and he cut taxes on corporations and on the rich. And when you do that, it creates what's known as a boom-bust cycle, where immediately things take off, everything seems to be increasing and doing well, the GDP goes up, stock market goes up, people are making a little bit more money for a certain amount of time. And in some situations, I don't think it's a part of the rule, or necessarily the exception, but some of those corporations might give a break to their employees or, whatever else. So you might see a little bit of a trickle down. But then you come about 10 years later, 15 years later, and you have a bust in the real estate market, or the stock market goes belly up. And it's just the same thing with the Great Depression following the Roaring 20s. It was like this big, crazy party time. Everybody's having a great time. And then all of a sudden it was the worst time in our country's history. And it was all because of decisions that were made multiple decades prior, So
trickle down economics, if you will.
Yeah, and so we're gonna see a lot of things thrown around, really politicized and sensationalized in the media.
Well,
let's not go full stock and barrel on everything that we see in the media, because now we're in another good thing to mention is that you have no way of deciding what's reliable information these days.
Mm-hmm. Well, that you've seen a lot of talk and heard a lot of talk about censoring the internet and all these big, social media companies, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all these guys censoring people from saying what they say to prevent the spread of false information. What you don't hear about is the spread of false information on TV. Like what you see on TV in the media, they are a company designed to sell you a story so that you will view them and make them money. They are still in the business of making money, so they're going to sell you and twist certain things. It may not be completely false, but it's not going to be a complete narrative. And that's another part when you're talking about the people who are not knowing or the dumbing down of the world. They don't take the energy or the time to go and find out for themselves once they've heard it. They just take it for what it is because it came from this news company, so it's got to be true. They wouldn't put it out there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's the same thing like newspapers, like the entire existence of newspaper and magazines. It's a communication to the masses to get them to have a certain opinion or bias.
And then going back to that documentary, The Social Dilemma, mm-hmm. The information that you do receive is curated based on a lot of other factors that you may not realize how it's being kind of orchestrated and set up. So ultimately, guys, do some research. Spend some time in thought. Like, really check into stuff for yourself before you go fully investing your identity into one side or the other. Or, let's all do a little bit more to come together and be a team humanity,
And if you find
team humans, team people.
if you find somebody who disagrees with you, maybe that's the person to have a conversation with,
Sure.
rather than the 3 people that already agree with you.
Yeah.
I want to add to your research. Once you do your research, please check who funded and presented that research, because that's also a massive key in what is scientific research and what is not.
Yeah, check what it is and check how it gets to you. That's I think the big thing. And
Absolutely.
and spend a little bit more time giving people the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? Let's not make our character judgments on each other based on a superficial judgment of whether or not we agree or we're on opposing teams or whatever. You know what I mean? Especially within the disc golf community, but you can take a little bit of that outside into the real world as well. I mean, I think things are only going to get, the social climate of our country and our society is not going to get any better until people start putting themselves in other people's shoes and trying to treat each other in a decent way, because that's how they would hope that people would treat them in the same kind of circumstance.
What's the golden rule? Treat people how you want to be treated. Growing up my whole life, I heard
And this is that time of year that people will be switching sponsors, signing new contracts. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this person took this money to go to this disc golf manufacturer. And it's like, you don't know all the ramifications. Well, number one, you don't know the details of their contract, what they get out of it. And so it's one of those where there's going to be changes. Each off season, there's changes, and your favorite player may play for a different manufacturer, but it's not like, oh, I got to be anti this person now because they're on the company that I don't like as much, or I don't throw as much. Like,
yeah, let me assure you guys, 9 times out of 10, the player and the company they left and all the people that were on the other team and all this stuff, they all know each other and have for years.
Yeah.
They're all friends.
right.
Their relationships are not going to be drastically affected by these changes.
it's business and personal.
Right.
And we disc golf for the main intents and purposes have been able to separate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun to kind of toss your bets into the pot on who's going where and what's going to happen with this person and all that stuff. And it's fun to speculate and talk about on podcasts and stuff like that. But be really careful how much weight you assign to it. I mean, and how much water you think it's going to hold, because perception is tricky like that, man. And just because it appears to an outside viewer that a relationship has ended or there's bad blood or tension or something, I'm betting you in almost all cases that is just not the truth. These people are still talking to each other. They still interact with each other on a regular basis because, yeah, disc golf is growing, but it's still a small niche community.
Sure.
And the people that are making things happen have conversations with each other.
And look at this year. We've had 2.
We're all working together. I mean, that's the thing is like
2 national TV, CBS Sports Network, and now we're going to ESPN2.
When does that air, by the way?
November, I think, this
I think
month.
it's November 18th.
Yeah.
I just noticed it got released on YouTube, so I was like, oh, did I miss it on ESPN?
Mm-mm.
Well,
I'll have to look
kind
it
of in the
ESPN2.
same realm of togetherness and what disc golf and the community and at a large and overall what we have, the togetherness, and in my personal opinion, the world could use some disc golf and the disc golf community. But the respect your game movement, like how much is that needed nowadays?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and even in our sport, and it still shows you that like 2020 that we are here right now, we have been fighting this battle. People have been fighting this battle of equality and fairness for decades. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, when are people going to wake up and learn like we are more the same than we are different? And it's just like, if you just like you were saying, just give love. And I think like my motto is give the world disc golf and it'll be a better place.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for anybody that's tuning into the show for the first time tonight, thank you for joining us for episode 13, the election special, getting political with us. Let's get political.
Political.
The election selection.
Good job.
Oh, real quick, before we bounce, I wanted to ask you that controversial question.
Well,
I want to get his take.
Let me
on it.
finish this thought real
Sorry,
quick,
buddy.
because I was going to say, for anybody that's tuning into the show for the first time, I just wanted to say I don't believe I introduced us at the very beginning. So I'm Will. That's Zach, a.k.a. I call him Dr. Hoy, and that's Jay Skinner.
Boom.
So that's been said. Go forth.
So my question, and this is controversial right now because of the elections and going on with the presidency, I am of the mind that there's not really much point in it at this point in time with the way our political system is. Now, that is a very controversial
Not much
stand.
point in the election.
Yeah,
Or-
because of the Electoral College, the popular vote. So my question to you is do either one of you agree or disagree? And if so, why or why not? I'm just curious because the way I look at it, and I'll give you my explanation, is the Electoral College 5 different times in the past has voted against the populist. And so when we have that and the ability to do so, what is the real point of actually voting as a person when the Electoral College can vote really however they want? They're supposed to, and a lot of them do, but I mean in history 5 different times they've not. And presidents have won because of that. So I'm just curious.
I mean, it seems like the politics. I mean, number one, what's your other option? You have to have an election.
Sure, you
But
have
then
to,
an election has rules, and then people figure out what are the rules of the game. Oh, go to Pennsylvania, go to Ohio, go to Wisconsin, go to North Carolina. Like, there's these places where the votes are much more. They matter a lot more
well, based on
versus
population.
the Electoral College in, say, California or Tennessee when it's gone the same way most elections. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's known where you have to go. I mean, when you have like the month left, like where you got to go. But
so you go and you get those people, right? And they all want to vote for you, but the Electoral College is like, of that state, and they're like, they vote against you. So the reason.
well, then I would
the
say
reason
you have
why
to
I asked.
change the like the system of using the Electoral College versus a generalized election without using the Electoral College.
But you definitely think there's a point to voting, like in general. That's my question.
Yeah, I think I would equate it to disc golf ratings and disc golf payout. We have rules on ratings, or we have rules on payout, what we have to pay out, how many people in a field of which tier depends on how much added cash, what's the percentage you have to pay out, and how many places you have to pay out, and what's the added cash. Because this came up at MCO with 600 people, and this person gets this payout, and this person gets this payout, and it gets to a point where it's $2 to $5 difference between like 22nd place, 23rd place, 24th place, and people, if they complain to us about the payout and why didn't you pay out this place more, it's pretty much, you have to look at the PDJ and what their things are, and the same with ratings. Like,
so how does that tie into voting?
Because it's the system. Like, if you don't like that the Electoral College, if you think your vote doesn't matter, say you're in Tennessee and it always goes one way,
you're just saying there has to be
your
a
vote
system.
doesn't matter, then you can't just say, man, this Electoral College, like, we all voted for this, but it went I mean, I can't think of a state where.
Let's say this. It's important for us to state that we are not political scientists.
No,
and
that's
that
right. Yeah,
the system of the Electoral College is something that is complex and is built around a lot of different concepts that we probably don't understand altogether. Yeah. But I do think it feels like an antiquated system. And when you factor that into all the problems that always come up, it's like the voting machines don't work, or we got to have a recount, or the mail-in ballots are becoming a big controversy. And then you come to this overall conclusion, based on the way things actually go, that it's like, it doesn't seem to be of any consequence anyway. It almost seems like the person that's in that office is just a face that's put on the entire like establishment for us to blame stuff on when things go wrong, or to watch and really applaud and get excited about when things are going well, and keep us kind of boxed in a little bit. And I don't know. I'm throwing wild stuff out there, but I think that the system does need to change, and I'm not the person to say in what way, but I mean, the office of president, I feel like it needs to be restructured or redesignated or something. I feel like it's just not. I definitely agree with you, Jay. I don't have 100% confidence in the voting process, and it's hard for me to say, like, it's hard for me to justify or reconcile myself with the fact that every big election we end up getting force-fed two candidates that I just really can't bring myself to feel like voting for.
Yeah, it seems like the Electoral College.
There should be more people.
You can only elect 2 people.
Yeah,
like if a
you
generalized
vote for
election,
somebody else that you like more, you're taking away from somebody else.
Right. Well, you have to have a certain amount of requirements to be able to get put on the ballot, and it's like there should be a lot more people brought to the table. Like, there shouldn't be requirements. If you have if you want to go run for president, you've got the money to do so, because unfortunately that's what it takes. Then you should be able to do it, and you should be able to be on the debates to give your statements, and then you shouldn't have to qualify to do so.
Well, you got to be 35 in the U.S.
Well, I mean, the age, okay, fine, but I'm talking about you shouldn't have to have a certain percentage of the popular vote wanting you to be
What about
able to
an
be
age?
on the ballot.
What about an age cap?
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like, right now
Younger
it seems to be like,
presidents have died.
Age limit.
when's this guy going to kick the bucket, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, younger presidents have died in office, and they say. I mean, you look at the year photos of all the presidents; they age quite a bit. So, I don't think age is going to have a big factor with it. I think it's going to be like Will said, a lot of the same. And the thing is, too, is like you have to. There's 3 different branches, and Congress didn't flip.
yeah.
It stayed Republican, and which is kind of odd because the Democrats thought it was going to. So I think we're going to run into the same thing that Trump had. There's going to be pushback on both sides, and we're going to be a lot of stalemate.
There's going to be a lot of executive orders because you're right, Congress is stalemated, and so.
And again, bringing back to the togetherness, it's like just work together to come up with a plan. Like it doesn't have to be agreed 100%, around the edges, but just a general guideline would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Something. Anyway. There's my political.
What just came into my head?
Political statement.
We are the world.
We are the world.
We are the children.
We are the children.
Da 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 da
Da,
da da.
Wrong song.
Just go give it.
Just go and give it.
Da 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 da.
Bow, bow,
This is,
bow,
this is
bow,
Bob
bow,
Dylan.
bow.
This is. You see that meme video with Bob Dylan going? In that "We Are the World" video?
No.
It's like I feel like something posted about a football game or something. I feel about as excited as Bob Dylan in the "We Are the World" video.
When
If
he
you go
was
back
just
and
like
watch it, and he's just
not
like
singing.
not singing at all, just moving his lips,
And
kind of.
then
going,
you look at Stevie Wonder, and he's killing it.
yeah. All right, guys.
I mean, you're putting on
Once
an
we
act,
get
bro.
in the
You
We Are the
don't
World.
know exactly.
What?
Nothing.
Huh?
Nothing.
Ricky?
Just
All right, guys. It's getting late.
Hey,
We
it's
want to
been
go to
fun.
bed.
I enjoyed this one.
This was good. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks, you guys.
Good night, Music City. We love you.
All right, guys. Peace out. We'll catch you on the flip. We are going to be back later this week. We're going to have Brian Earhart in the studio.
With the rewind.
Yeah,
The
gonna be
man
fun.
behind the Flight Diary.
Lefty.
Podcast.
Which, just a heads up, if you're not listening to the Flight Diary, go subscribe right now because, in all honesty, as another podcast host, my favorite disc golf podcast is the Flight Diary.
Yeah, the Clemens Earhart
And if you
one on
haven't-
the Flight Diary. That's
Yeah, check them out for sure. That's a really great podcast.
Yep.
And if you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment.
subscribe.
Subscribe, lass. You're looking lovely this evening.
Lucy, see here.
Rest in peace to Sean Connery, by the way.
And Alex
Oh,
Trebek.
what?
And Alex
What?
Trebek. Yep.
Oh,
And
man.
Alex
My
Trebek.
heart has been broken twice this evening. I didn't
terrible.
know these things.
Yeah.
Terrible news.
Sean Connery.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a nice
Those are big
suit, Trebek.
losses. A couple of big
Yeah.
losses right back to back, too.
Do they make it in men's?
My lass, you're looking lovely this evening.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That's enough from us for tonight. And like I said, we'll catch you later on this week for another episode.
Peace.
Peace.
Let the bass kick.